What can we expect to find in these files?
There's more money in child trafficking than there is in drugs or weapons. They can only sell the weapons or the drugs once. They used to bring 10 boys down from the children's home and only 9 ever went back. They organ harvest them. That's where you never find them. These are the most powerful people in the world. MI5 and Special Branch covered it up. Politics, big corporations, the media, the judiciary, the police. Not all the apples in all of those institutional barrels are rotten. Any apple that wants to rise to the top has got to be willing to rot. People who are healthy, wealthy, intelligent are harder to control than people who are ill, poor and scared. Who invested in vaccines just before the pandemic? Oh, Bill Gates. Nigel's, I think, completely compromised. Bought and paid for. Completely controlled.
Rupert Lowe.
He's right that our politics is corrupt. He's right about uncontrolled migration, illegal migration.
You've said that Britain's on the precipice of what exactly? Andrew Bridger, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. Nigel Farage once said that you're always looking for a fight. We're going to come back to that down the line. I would say you're one of the most fearless former MPs in Great Britain. First of all, I want you to talk about Secret Greens, which by your own words is going to be the biggest scandal since Epstein.
Right. So for people who don't know, Secret Greens, what I found out a long time ago, and I've had it confirmed by multiple former close protection officers, is that part of their duties, obviously that you're a close protection officer, you've got to be situation aware, you've got to be monitoring people, what's going on for the person you're protecting publicly and in private. You get to know a lot of secrets about them. They were writing down exactly what their target, their protected person had done all week, and also any malfeasance and any crimes. And they were handwritten reports at the end of the week, which went into green folders and went to Special Branch, labelled secret, and they're also made available to MI5. Those files have been going on for at least 50 years. King Charles says he wants full transparency.
Does he?
Well, he might not. I don't think not that much transparency, obviously. Well, now you've got former protection officers off the record saying, well, we knew all about this behaviour because we reported it. You've got the Met saying that they don't exist, which is being generous, disingenuous. So it's only political pressure and public pressure. And the King says we want full transparency. All the answers are in the Secret Greens. And if they're made public, that's going to just raise a question, is that the establishment knew exactly what was going on.
And what was going on, and what can we expect to find in these files?
Well, you've got the former protection officer, Barry Strevens. Strevens, he's gone public and said that he told Mrs. Thatcher that Peter Morrison, her PPS, MP for Chester, was abusing young boys. And that Mrs. Thatcher ignored that, gave him a knighthood and promoted him. I've also had meetings with other former Special Branch officers who said that they had uncovered a property in the 80s in London where there's a large number of Conservative MPs and underage boys, and they went to Number 10 and asked permission to raid it, and that wasn't given. And that Number 10 knew the names of the MPs who were at that event. I think gathering is what they call it nowadays. They don't know what to call it.
Yeah.
And some of those were promoted afterwards as well. So there's a lot going to be in there. Also, Edward Heath. I tried to protect Mike Veal, who was the Chief Constable of Wiltshire, who thought he'd hit the jackpot when he got asked to do an investigation into historic crimes, allegations against Edward Heath. Obviously, Heath's was dead. Can't answer any questions. There were 32 alleged victims who are men now, who were young boys at the time, all over the country, and they decided to let Wiltshire police do it because Salisbury was where Edward Heath's constituency was when he was an MP and where he lived. So they decided to let... And I spoke to Mike Veal. He is touchingly naive. He was. He joined the police at 16, worked his way up to be Chief Constable. One of the straightest, honest policemen I've ever met. And I said to him, when he started Conifer, which was the investigation into Edward Heath, this is back in 2014. And I said, look, are you going to do a proper investigation? He said, of course I am, Andrew. I said, well, you do realise if you come to the right conclusion and follow the evidence, the establishment are going to close ranks, they're going to destroy you. And he just didn't believe it. And that's exactly what happened. And all that Mike could do with the evidence, and the way he did it, Liam, was brilliant. To avoid any intimidation of his officers, the investigative team, what he did was he recruited the 22 best detectives in the whole country who'd just retired. They did a 2-year investigation and then went back to retirement, so they weren't looking for a promotion. Couldn't be nobbled, yeah? It was just extra buns for them for 2 years. And he got the choice of all the best detectives who'd retired recently in the whole country. And they all stuck with him. They did all the interview of all the alleged victims. None of them knew of each other. None of them knew of each other's names. They'd never had contact, so they were all independent. And several of them came out with the same really weird story on Heath, that Heath had attached a metal extension to his hand and abused the boys with that, which I don't think you could make that up. But all they could say was at the end, if he were alive today, he would be arrested and interviewed under caution in relation to the abuse of young boys. And that was too much for the establishment. But obviously, if a prime minister could have done that, anything's possible, isn't it?
Well, totally, yeah.
And of course, they'll say, well, their defence was he couldn't have done that because he was a prime minister and a former prime minister, and he had close protection officers with him all the time who wouldn't allow that to happen.
On to the next question. Who needs to be worried about this Secret Greens file being leaked or published?
Anyone who's been engaged in inappropriate behaviour, malfeasance in public office, crimes, who had government-provided, police-provided bodyguards.
And have you got an insight into any specific individuals?
I
suppose you have to say allegedly.
Allegedly, I think a lot of former prime ministers and high holders of office. I think if there's nothing to hide, transparency is the answer. Let's see the files.
Yeah, when you mentioned about not being able to be nobbled, when I looked at your work and how outspoken you were, and I mean, I'll coin the phrase "zero fucks given." You said what you thought, very honest. You went against the grain, and I wondered why. And then I researched just how successful you were as a businessman, and I thought, there's a man that can't be bought or paid for. He's going to say exactly how he feels, and rightly so, which is why I think you've got a very, very popular following. And you speak a lot about satanic child organ harvesting and trafficking. Can you unpack that for me? Because this sounds remarkably unbelievable to your average person that's against the clock, that has to be at work for 7, they've got to leave the train at 5, and they're so busy with their own life. This sort of subject matter won't even be on their radar. And if they're told it down the pub or at a dinner party, they'll think this is too outrageous for it to be true. But you know different.
There's a strong feeling that Edward Heath himself was a satanic child abuser. I mean, what I heard, I spoke to a witness from Jersey. The Nation, when he was a former prime minister, I think they bought him a yacht called Morning Cloud as his sort of retirement present.
Morning Cloud?
Morning Cloud was the name of his yacht.
Is that code for something?
No, but he used to sail to Jersey a lot.
Right.
He sailed to Jersey so often that there was a contingency plan for him dying on the island. Right. But also on the island of Jersey, there was a children's home called Oak de Garonne. Now, you could abscond from a children's home in Birmingham and go to London and never be seen again. The only way off Jersey's a very small island. I've been there a few times. Lovely place, but I mean, it's small. And the only way off that island is either in an aeroplane or a boat. And I spoke to an alleged witness who had a house overlooking the harbour, and she said that they used to bring 10 boys down from the children's home and only 9 ever went back.
Okay.
The allegation is that Heath abused the 12, 13-year-old boy, who obviously would recognise him, and then they killed him and put him over the side out at sea. And that's where I spoke to the investigative team that were looking at Oak de Garonne, and when you've got tough former Ulster constabulary police officers being intimidated, they couldn't return to the island because they'd be killed. That's unbelievable. And they tell me that I know the difference between coconut shells and skull fragments, and when I put skull fragments into a bag to go for forensics and it comes back 6 weeks later and it's coconut shells,